Let's just get this out of the way. I know that this is nowhere even close to September. This is Memorial Day or around Memorial Day when I post this. But given that the subject matter that I'm going to address has to do with the War on Terror, which consists of the last two wars that the United States has fought, where many men and women were killed on the battlefields of Afghanistan and Iraq in the service of the land of the free. So I feel like in a way it's necessary to talk about this. Not to mention that Memorial Day was one of the most patriotic holidays in the United States. And one of you has been suggesting this video to me for years, and I've never been able to get around to it until now. For anyone who's not in the know, Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic, is one of the most successful and prolific YouTubers on the platform that talk about various topics in entertainment. A lot of people that I watched back in the day used to cite him as a really big influence. Some would even go as far as to say that they're big fans of him. I don't mean any ill will towards him at all personally. For myself, I've never really connected with his content, but the elephant in the room here is his consensus on the Spider-Man movies, particularly the original 3 by Sam Raimi. Years back before Tom Holland came into the picture, and even long before No Way Home showed the return of Tobey Maguire in the titular role, there was a huge amount of disdain towards the original 3 movies, especially in light of the Andrew Garfield series. Doug Walker was no exception to this rule, since he posted a video on top 11 dumbest moments in the Spider-Man movies. I personally don't care what opinions he has on those 3 movies, and having seen people coming around to the original 3 movies, I've been able to put it behind me. But one particular moment that I've always been really bothered by is his nitpicking of the post 9/11 imagery in the original film, especially in the 3rd one.
Now, like any American, I'm proud of my country. It's a great place to be and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But after 9/11, we seem to really want to remind ourselves of that over and over. So to make up for it, like every movie that came out right after 9/11, they put a big American flag in there. And of course, the post 9/11 crowd loved it. Yeah, it's a bit hokey now, but you could excuse the first film as it was reacting to the emotions of the American people at the time. But by the time the 3rd film did it, the gimmick wore out its welcome. It was years later, and now it seemed like it was going from kind of forceful to uncomfortably forceful. You don't need to hammer in that Spider-Man's American. His freaking colors are red, white, and blue! How much more American can you get?
He even brought that same point up again when he talked about the first movie a few years ago.
Oh yeah, did I mention this was made right after 9/11?
Leave Spider-Man alone! You got a pick on a guy trying to save a bunch of kids! You mess with Spidey, you mess with New York! You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us!
God bless you, your heart's in the right place.
Now, I need to specify, he's not the only person to make these kind of criticisms, as I've heard other people groan over this, but I really think this is not only a huge nitpick, but also kind of an idiotic take. He does acknowledge the fact that this came out after 9/11, hence the use of the American flag imagery, but I also think he's kind of missing the point here. This was during a time when America was hit really hard, where a force of opposition snuck in out of nowhere, causing so much destruction and loss of life. In the months that followed, many people in the United States, including myself, were trying to comprehend how could something like this happen on our soil. And as for what he said about the 3rd movie bringing up the American flag as Spider-Man swinging in to save MJ from Venom and Sandman, besides Doug Walker, I don't really remember anybody else bringing that point up. With the first movie, yeah, some people have mentioned that, but with the 3rd film, I don't really think it's brought up as much. And even in 2007, it was during the height of the Iraq War, the troop surge. It was 5 years after the events of 9/11. Yes, a good amount of time had definitely passed, but even so, the scars were still lingering around in some people. And even some people to this day will still carry on those memories. And in light of the coronavirus pandemic, I got no doubt that there's some people carrying some scars and wounds from that too. This is also not the first time that Hollywood's carried on some kind of trend like this. Anytime a big world event happens, it just carries over into fiction, mirroring our own reality. You don't have to do an incredible amount of research into Hollywood history in order to figure that out. Case in point, the original Star Wars in 1977. A few years prior to that, the Vietnam War ended for the United States, which was not considered a victory, especially in light of the anti-war sentiment that settled among the US population. On top of that, Richard Nixon had to resign from office due to the scandal over the Watergate tapes, further shaking the American people's faith in their government. By the time the original Star Wars came out, it gave people a similar sense of hope and escapism, something to feel excited about because there really wasn't much to get excited about in the real world. Now, in the original Star Wars, there was clearly a lot of political undertones and overtones, but that's not the point. 25 years later, Spider-Man did the exact same thing in a post 9/11 world. Being from the States, naturally, I am a patriot. I served 6 years in the Army National Guard, for crying out loud. That doesn't mean I'm not critical of certain policies that the United States government has had in place, and I'm not one of those people who gets overjoyed over the sight of seeing an American flag in a movie or a show, but admittedly, I do smile at it because I think it's important to show some pride in your country. Not to get preachy or anything, but I don't really see anything wrong with showing something like that. You can argue with other movies movies and shows that have some kind of trope where it could come off a little heavy-handed. I don't really see that as the case with Spider-Man, especially with the attitude of the citizens of New York. I'm from South Central Pennsylvania. I was not born and raised there, but my family is from the New York area. Not only is this scene, I think, very realistic, even though they don't really treat each other so nicely all the time, narratively speaking, it proves the Green Goblin's point wrong, because as he says to him earlier in the rooftop scene,
in spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you. Why bother?
and for a period of time, it looks like his point is being proven correct, at least until this moment happens, where it not only proves the Green Goblin wrong, but it also reminds Spider-Man and the audience that there is at least some people in New York City that are willing to stand up for him, and not all of them believe the lies that are being told by the Daily Bugle. And as I stated earlier, this came out during a time when America was hit really hard. America needed some kind of beacon of hope to look up to, and I certainly do not see it as a negative in the least bit. This is not a knock against Doug Walker. He can feel this way if he wants to. I just personally have found that take kind of idiotic. So those are my thoughts on that subject. What are your thoughts on this topic? Comment below and tell me what they are. Stay tuned for more videos coming up really soon, and as always, see you in the next one.